Hello, everyone.
Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of The New Frontier. Super excited today as we have with us three friends of the podcast.
Superstars. Exactly. All people who have been on the podcast, have shared amazing insights, and now they have done a dream team job and have rolled out an amazing piece of insight. So, unless you have been living under a rock for the last week, you probably have not missed the RUFUS blueprint paper that has been absolutely everywhere. I mean, pretty much anyone who is like posting out anything on LinkedIn, newsletters, etc., has been talking about this RUFUS blueprint white paper, which Oana, Danny, and Andrew wrote out, and we have invited them to talk about it in detail because it's spot on about what we want to talk about. I was thinking about doing a very quick intro to those three, though they're very well known, but I will still do it. So Oana is obviously an Amazon strategy specialist and an AI A9 algorithm enthusiast. Danny is the co-founder of Databril and the founder of Seller Sessions Live. And Andrew is an Amazon e-commerce manager at the National Fire Protection Association, and he is the absolute master of custom GPTs, who has created more than 200 custom GPTs. So they are a dream team. They have a lot to share, and I'm going to shut up now because they are going to be doing mostly the talking. Hello, guys.
How are we doing?
Hey, how's it going?
Hey,
Hello.
I really hope.
So,
I need to apologize if I have connection issues for some reason. Italy weather started to kind of like bail on me, and I'm seeing that my connection is unstable. So apologize for that.
Don't worry, I have a barking dog in the background, so it will be a fabulous episode. So first question is actually, I would really love to start with some of the key outtakes from the paper, because obviously it was an absolute beast, and I would really recommend for people to invest the time to read the whole thing. But given that we are short in time, it would be great for you guys to just give us some of the, maybe like a little summary of what you guys discovered, what are the main sort of insights and outtakes that Amazon sellers should know about.
Gonna go first, Andrew?
Yeah, absolutely. So with the patent, Amazon RUFUS, I think what's really interesting is like, this is not just an Amazon science paper, right? This is an actual patent. This is strategies backed up by a patent created by Amazon. And with the RUFUS patent, I think it's interesting because like it's showing things that RUFUS, we didn't really know about RUFUS before per se. We might have known intuitively, but we didn't know before, such as noun phrase optimization, semantic understanding optimization, inference optimization. I think that's the ultimate keyword there is inference. And inference being is making, conclusion based on reasoning and evidence simply. But Amazon's investing heavily in things like that already with inference. And so I think it goes right in line with Cosmo as well when dealing with, again, noun phrase optimization, semantic understanding, and then, of course, the visual aspect of things, because RUFUS is multimodal as well, right? It's not just a single type of, just text or something. It's text, it's visual, and soon we'll see video. I'm even seeing examples right now, and I kind of going to announce right now is that there's sponsored videos actually now showing up on RUFUS in beta. If you go to RUFUS and you look for products from the search engine results page, which is really cool. So yeah, we're really excited here to kind of dig in, but yeah, kind of an introduction to, the patent. And I just can't believe I found it in the first place, guys. I mean, what did you think, Danny? Danny was just like, no, there's no way this is the case, right, Danny?
Well, this is the thing, like the risk that you're always going to take, and we'll get to the writing in a bit. The thing is, all three of us could have wrote that, right, individually, but the work that went into it, the full circumference of it, which is why part of the reason why, like Joe said, if you're living under a rock, it landed, right? But it could have gone a completely different direction if we didn't do the diligent work. Like one of the first things I did, I'm like, is this bullshit? And I spent a long time going to look and find, in terms of comparison, I wanted to find 100 reasons why this would be the RUFUS patent. Yeah. And then Juana went off and done hers and Andrew done his, because you have to be sure about these things. Because the last thing you want to do is spend hundreds of hours on something and someone goes, you know what, this is not it. Because one, it's highly embarrassing. And two, it puts what we're trying to do by pushing the science back a number of years. So the biggest part of this is getting to the conclusions and the diligent research before you even get to the writing stage or the breaking down.
And I remember when first Andrew came to me, it's like, I think I found the RUFUS patent. And I was like, no way. Because we spent, I think, weeks talking about how do we find some science papers on RUFUS, remember? And we got so excited when there was a blog mention on Amazon Science about it, trying to understand more how it works, because it ultimately comes down to how popular RUFUS became. Because if you remember at the beginning of last year, and this is super funny because on the 2nd of February, Amazon announced RUFUS by just being tested on a group of people of 100, remember? And then it was in May that they kind of started releasing it to the public. And at the time, I was like, okay, this will change how people shop on Amazon. Of course, it will not happen overnight, and that was something expected. And in the beginning, RUFUS was quite not okay, right? It would have a lot of hallucinations. And I remember some posts from UMax showing how RUFUS doesn't really respond or pulls, wrong information from your product detail page. And I think that was something that everybody was expecting, but you don't really see that anymore. You don't see that anymore. And I know I reached out to you yesterday about some numbers, Max, in terms of the usages of how many people are actually utilizing RUFUS at the moment, what they had, and it reached 100 million.
Well, that's what they said on the stage of Amazon Accelerate. So
which was in September.
Yes, in September.
Yeah. So we kind of expect that to increase, and all that is being somehow explained. So the progress that we see from May to September and from September to now on is the progress that you kind of expect just by how the patent is being laid down, because it is mentioned it has been trained on a data set. But then what makes it really smart and powerful is its ability to learn, right? It learns from behavior, it learns from different points, it learns from customer interaction at a product level, at a search level, at a category level. So it pulls all that information, it gets processed and stored, and it just gets smarter day by day in terms of what to recommend, how to put the connections between different products, between different concepts, and the whole purpose of it, which kind of a big thing that came for me personally learning from the patent itself was the ability to look beyond just a group of keywords as a direct match and focus on the intent in order to give responses and then to do a personal recommendation on products. I think that's what was my key, kind of learning from it and seeing how amazing this system is and what to expect next, because again, it's just the beginning on how it absorbs information and how it processes.
Yeah. And as with kind of everything in this space, lots of people putting out lots of content, trying to get clicks. From reading the patent and, really kind of debating it amongst you guys and testing as well, what myths are there out there about optimizing for RUFUS, if any, that you think have been dispelled by your research here?
I would say sorry, go on, one.
No, I apologize. Go.
I would say, when we say dispelling myths, I think the thing is that you have observation testing because no one had the foundation to work through. So it'd be unfair to say myths per se. People out there trying their best, and they are using a small sample set through observation and say, oh, it does this, it does that. And I think all we've done is come along and put a bow on it, because now we're bringing in semantic similarity, which is different from semantic matching. The way that click training data, whilst works similar, is different. The way that it ranks and extracts n-grams is different, because n-grams is something like a lot of people heard of unigram, which is 1, big grams is 2, and trigrams is 3, and then you've got 4 grams as well. But it's how these are now broken down in terms of how that's extracted, and then how it's applied with noun phrases. And Andrew, there's some things you see in the article. There's things that noun phrase optimization, noun phrase stacks and stuff. These are all things that Andrew's developed based on the science. Do you understand? Mm. So I think it'd be unfair to say myths per se. It'd be more of people trying things. This is what I found. Mm-hmm. This is what I'm reporting. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'll put the question. I'll rephrase the question slightly. I'm not talking about sellers who are experimenting and testing. I'm talking more about content creators. You know, people in their newsletters. We're not naming any names, but like certain people go up and do hacks on optimizing for RUFUS without doing any testing, reading the science paper. So I don't know if there are any kind of themes. I'll go to Andrew and Anana on that you're hearing that you think is now not true from this. I
think most of them have been somewhat correct, but they're not been shaped and formed in a way that backs up other than isolated testing with observation. I think one of the key things, and Andrew's probably best to answer this because it might have changed yesterday and I'll look like a bit of an idiot, but RUFUS, as I understand, doesn't read the objects in the image per se, but they're reading the text. But that may change. We don't know that. That could change tomorrow. It could change next week. And then also you've got the argument that there are people out there who don't want to see this stuff come through. They have configured their way of working as the gospel. And then it's hard for them to backtrack because they then got to then go and say, no, actually, this is incorrect. And one of the things what we do, and I know you do, and Joe does this as well, we will path correct all the way through. We would say, do you know what? That's what we thought. But from further analysis and more testing, et cetera, we were wrong. Here is the answer. Or someone will tell us we're wrong, and then we'll correct our own paths. Do you know what I mean? But I think when some people will dig their heels in and they'll die on that hill because their catalog would mean the value would start to dissipate. Does that make sense? So I think there's more of that in play.
I wanted to dig in deeper in some of the specific insights that you guys came up with, and maybe as you mentioned, Danny, Andrew probably is the first person to answer this one. Specifically, let's start with the hold on, I'm getting the phraseology right. The noun phrase optimization. So can we talk a little bit more about what it is, the definition, and how it is different from what people are doing right now in terms of optimization of listings?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, these are the things, again, we go through, thinking about when optimizing for RUFUS, what are the core loves for RUFUS? And we've talked about NPO, noun phrase optimization, is super key, which is different from let's just say long tail queries as an example. So one of the ways that to feed RUFUS, if you will, right, to feed them, is through a new term we're calling noun phrase optimization. Traditional SEO targets basic nouns, lamp, chair, table, even just table lamp, etc. Even vintage table lamp, it doesn't go even farther enough. So the modern semantic approach now that we have is builds detailed noun phrases by combining descriptive modifiers with core nouns. So for example, you have, instead of just journal, it's leather bound writing journal. Instead of bookshelf, it's hand carved mahogany bookshelf. Instead of coffee maker, it's stainless steel pour over coffee maker. And so the key here is to construct comprehensive noun phrases that capture specific product attributes, materials, styles, and purposes in a natural, descriptive way. So each modifier in the noun adds that semantic value and helps match the way people conceptualize products to their seeking. So think of it as building a noun stack where each descriptive element, this is key, enriches the core noun. You have the material, the style, the purpose, the core item. That equals the core noun phrase. And so according to the patent, RUFUS core functionality relies on extracting and ranking noun phrases to connect questions and products. This is fundamental to how RUFUS understands and recommends for us. So an implementation strategy, for example, would be something like, okay, every bullet point, lead bullet points with strong noun phrases, connect features to benefits using compound noun phrases. So having example of an ergonomic handle design, well, that leads to a professional chef's grip. That's the importance of an ergonomic handle design. So on the stack you'd say professional chef's grip. And that's something that's not obviously said in like a traditional keyword research tool, right? So you would need to have a keyword research tool that would be able to say, oh, ergonomic handle design. By the way, a backup keyword to that would be professional chef's grip, as an example. And so with this architecture, you got to open paragraphs with your key noun phrases, layer related noun phrases throughout content, and then you need to build those semantic connections within the phrases as well. So let me give you one example. An example product being a premium coffee maker. This is like a basic to advanced noun stack progression. So you have coffee maker, but not just that, you have a programmable coffee maker. Not just that, you have something feature enhanced. It's a programmable stainless steel coffee maker. Oh, not only that, you have a professional grade programmable coffee brewing machine system. Then you have a professional thermal brewing system, programmable coffee maker, premium bean to cup machine. Now, that's not to say you take that and you just throw it in, but it gives you a basis from which to actually write about your product in a way that's descriptive, that's feature enhanced, benefit integrated, and then also is optimizing again at the end of the day for inference. And so the goal here is to create meaningful, semantically rich noun stacks that RUFUS can effectively process and connect to customer queries while maintaining the natural language patterns on clear product associations. So the ergonomic handle design is a professional chef's grip. So connecting things like that together that might be obvious with traditional keyword research.
And can I just sorry to jump in, but like one sort of like follow-up questions is, this makes total sense, and it makes total sense about how we make decisions about products and how we search for products. So it's like getting as close as possible the way we think and the way we make our decisions. But if you are a seller right now and you have a product listing that hasn't been at all optimized for RUFUS, how would you even start coming up with this specific benefit and features sort of like related to phraseology? Because it's not as simple as really understanding, okay, this is a how can I say, a comfy chair. It needs to be like almost the phraseology is very, very special. And, like how would you go about, what would be your starting point?
Yeah, I think this is where we get into inference. I think this is super big. And I know traditional mindsets might be reeling about now, but I think patented truth has a way of doing that. Because what this paper is saying is that as e-commerce experts, we must of necessity now think conversationally, semantically, and inferentially about our product listings. So RUFUS is simply the start of something so much bigger. AI search shopping keywords are not dead per se, but the way we use them is slowly dying. So this era of static keyword stuff listings is over. And this, e-commerce being discoverable through conversation, context, and being customer centric is the future. But I think that with inference, like having pathways that map features to benefits and outcomes. So let me give you an example through a Victorian wall mirror. So you have to go through, let's say, the primary features and inferences from a Victorian wall mirror. So you would say, okay, this has an ornate gold frame. Well, what does that even mean? Well, the primary inference there would be, well, it adds elegance, having an ornate gold frame, which then creates a luxurious aesthetic. And then your secondary inferences might be, well, this complements vintage or Victorian decor. It enhances the look of traditional, possibly even farmhouse interiors. It draws attention as a statement piece. So just from the phrase ornate gold frame, you have so much right there to go on that you can talk about how this creates a luxurious aesthetic and adds elegance to your home with a vintage Victorian style decor. So it's that instead of like just having it all, plugged in, because the point of noun stacks isn't to build it up and then put that exactly in. Otherwise, you'd just be doing what keyword research tools suggest to do, most suggest to do. What you want to do is add all those inferences together into a single paragraph, and then Rufus will infer from ornate gold frame and go to product listings that have things like, well, it adds elegance, it creates a luxurious aesthetic, it complements vintage or Victorian decor, it enhances the look of traditional styles. So it'll be able to do that versus, another listing that might only just have ornate gold frame. Rufus will actually infer and go to the product that is talking about the inferences from being an ornate gold frame. And that's just one feature, right? Because you could have then beveled glass. Well, what does it mean to have beveled glass? Well, it reflects light. That enhances room brightness and depth. And if you're, a seller struggling to do that, I would definitely suggest using the prompted bot that we have. It actually does all this for you. And then you can just review it for yourself to say, oh, okay, yeah, I wouldn't have thought about that before. But the bot is completely based on, these optimization strategies. And so you're asking, how can a seller do that? Because it's not as obvious to be like, oh, yeah, adds elegance, create a luxury aesthetic. Oh, reflects light. Yeah, enhances room brightness and depth. Whereas the bot will automatically do that for you. And then for you, you just got to review. You know your product better than anybody. So you would just match that up against your product and see where it goes. So I would definitely suggest that.
Yeah.
And I can understand how that can be challenging. And apologies, I dropped for a second because I had a power outage. I can understand how that can be challenging because we are coming from a realm of lexical focused people, right? Everybody was, you need to have this keyword 50 times in your listing to assure that it gets what it is. You don't need to do that. Rufus understands what your product is. Make sure that you optimize it in a way that you keep it relevant, especially for the back end. And I know Danny has been pushing with this, I don't know, for the past maybe 6 months, talking every time possible. Make sure that you have relevant information in the back end for the algorithm overall, but also for Rufus, right? And then, as Andrew mentioned, make sure that of course, if you can't, if you don't have that natural, I would say, writer abilities, right? Leverage AI and make sure that you create a content. But the core focus is to make sure that when you create the content, you don't think about traditional indexation in terms of keyword stuffing, because that will not help you at all, right? It will just occupy space. And most likely, if you fail to add some information that Rufus can see the context behind it, Rufus will not pull your product, or will say that it cannot pull the information from your product detail page in order to answer specific questions that might be relevant to your product. And what Rufus does when that happens is it recommends another product, a competitor, right? So that's the one thing that you need to avoid. Understanding how to optimize your listing for Rufus's questions that are relevant to your product, right? Because the one thing that you want to avoid is getting customers to purchase your product through Rufus questions, having a wrong idea about the product, then they receive the product, then they have to return the product, right? So that's also something that you need to keep in mind. Make a list of the features that your product has. Nobody knows your product better than you, just like Andrew said. And then you kind of like connect that to any possible benefits out there that the customer can have, right? Like make that list, make sure that you think about them, and you kind of explain them out. And of course, then just go and test for Rufus in order to understand how it replies to those questions. And if that matches what you have an idea about your product itself.
Yeah. So I think, thanks for that detailed explanation, Andrew and Oana. I think as Danny was kind of saying, people have been talking about optimizing for context rather than keywords for a while, but this is more like now you've got the framework and the science behind like what actually is happening here. It's the noun phrases. So I think that's super interesting. So the next kind of key takeaway I took from reading your paper was on click training data. And I thought that was super interesting because I don't know if you remember, there was a Google leak last year at some point that came out that Google was using their browser to like train the search engine better from all the click, all the clicks in Chrome. So it was very interesting to me to read that Amazon's doing the same thing for Rufus. I don't know which one of you is best to kind of give more context on that. And
I would like to go ahead when
go
it
on.
comes to the technical geeky side.
Yeah, go on.
Throw it on my plate. But yes, that was something like, let's call it again the memory, right? If you would need to look at Rufus's, I don't know if it would be correct to call it like the brain and the memory of it overall, but that what ultimately is the place where which is interesting is I mentioned in the beginning that Rufus gets smarter, where Rufus gets smarter thanks to the information that is being stored and processed in the click training data, right? And the patent clearly lays out how this improves with every interaction. And what's interesting from the patent itself is that you understand how the click training data is involved at different levels. So it's not only how you individually as a shopper interact with Rufus, but how people on a specific category or on a specific product type interact with Rufus, and how it makes the connection between different concepts. In the patent, there's that very interesting example with shoes for flat feet, right? And it makes the example how if you ask a question, what are the best shoes for flat feet? And some responses may come up based on what Rufus was trained. But then over time, if people interact with products that are connected to shoes for flat feet and a specific feature as a pattern shows up, like cushioning, Rufus will be able to correlate the two concepts together and generate questions around shoes for flat feet with extra cushioning. I thought that was really interesting because it shows its ability to go beyond what you would expect. Okay, these are my sets of questions, and kind of like, okay, that's it, I optimize for it. Those questions can change from one moment to the other. In fact, you see when you interact with Rufus, you click on one question and then 5 more pop up, and then you click again and others pop up, right? So
do we have data on that the questions on a seller's page that Rufus suggests change over time?
You can go at different, yes, they change in terms of the format maybe that they are asked, not necessarily on the topics themselves at the when you talk about the same products. So if you go and look at, I don't know, your product versus your competitors, they will not be identical 100% questions on both pages, right? And that was something that was interesting and kind of like, because if you remember, you talked about urban legends, right? In the beginning, when everybody was like, how do we optimize for Rufus? Everybody was like, okay, let's just put the exact response of the first question on my images. But what happens if that changes, or you go and you want to overcome when it comes to your competitors, and that's not the first question that your main competitor has on their page, right? So that was kind of like the connection on how you take this to the next level and really understand the fundamentals of it, rather than chasing a quick trick to solving that one thing that really comes to your mind. I know I kind of like went off with this in terms of the click training data, but that's how important this specific part it is. And you see it mentioned in the patent itself, and how it does the correlation, again, not only for only you as a user, but over time as a group of people, audiences, that it groups together, understand the same interests. It goes beyond the behavior. And at the end, also how it makes the correlations between products that are being bought through traditional search versus products that are being bought from questions, and how it makes the connections and how it understands to recommend those.
Can I just add to that? This isn't in the article, but just to give you a bit of a flow of the loop of the training data. So you've got the user query, and then from there the phrases are extracted, and then you've got what's called a semantic scoring, so it creates for the initial ranking. Then what it does after that is tracking the clicks, and then over time it will adjust those scores and then gives it its final ranking, and it goes into a feedback loop, and it continuously like that. So going back to what Weiner says, it starts to update over a period of time.
Super interesting. And the other thing that I like, we talked just the one I just mentioned, images and updating images. And one of the things that I found really interesting, and obviously this was something that the industry started talking about, the fact that the Amazon algorithm is already kind of scanning the images of listings, and now it kind of knows what this listing is by the images. But you guys coined the sort of the term around visual label tagging. So do you guys want to talk a little bit about what this is? Why is it important? And then I guess the follow-up question is, how would people decide what exactly these visual labels should be?
Andrew, you come up with a name. You like to make up all the fancy names.
Yeah, it actually came to my mind. I'm like, well, what do I call it? Visual label tagging. No, I'm kidding. I thought through it quite deeply. The patent obviously indicates Rufus can process visual content alongside text, making this image optimization crucial for discovery. And you'll see, like in the paper, all the different multimodal examples that I've given, one with Nerf guns and one with the portable massage gun, if you haven't already seen that one, that I think Kevin King had shared, and others. But I think what's really important here, and Danny and I did a whole podcast on this. This was before patent. I think this has been a real world visual example for a while now that we've had.
Didn't you come on to Max and Joe? Didn't you do it there as
I did with you guys. You guys know all about this. So that's visual label tagging. Yeah, exactly. We both did almost hour sessions on these things with visual label tagging. And I think the key is here, on an image, for example, when you have something that has a tag on it, it could be can use on the go. Okay, if you can use it on the go, and then the question that Rufus might have, and this might be a reverse optimization technique as well, is what you could do is you could take whatever questions that Rufus has for that product, and then say, okay, I'm going to answer it indirectly in these as well, as long as it authentically represents your product. Because like Juana says, you don't want to be at the mercy of the next best trick. You'd rather be at the mercy of just the science, because science is steady and true. The next best trick, although it's important, and I would argue that in those podcasts, that's what I was offering, was the next best trick. But now we know from the science that visual label tagging is a very big thing. And it doesn't just include alt text. This is key. I heard someone post about it, and it almost seemed like they were just saying it's alt text, which isn't false. It is alt text, but it's also putting text actually on the image itself, because Rufus uses OCR, and is able to optical character recognition, and is able to actually read the letters on each individual image. And it does it despite the aesthetic or style of the font. It doesn't matter how big or small, it reads it on the image as long as you have it on the image. And it'll bring it into the chat as a sort of way to help visually enhance the customer experience. And so I think having visual label tagging, where we can go into the actual images, not just alt text. Okay, this is important. It's not just alt text. It's also putting text on the images themselves. It is way more than just alt text. And I think this goes to importance too, is you might confuse Rufus if you put a bunch of random alt text suggestions in there, or combinations that are just the same, because it's going to bring in the same image every time if you do that, unless you label your image a certain way. So you could leverage on the one hand, you put in the terms that you wouldn't have otherwise on the product detail page. And then you can also have your visual label tags on the images themselves. So if, I think having a, overhaul of optimization on doing your images, I think everybody should be going back and making sure that they have text on their images.
Yeah,
And can I just sorry, can I just jump in and sort of like ask one additional question, which is around maybe this is not something that you have findings yet, but is there a sort of hierarchy of importance of where exactly in your listing the sort of the text appears? So like, is there a hierarchy, whether it's like the most important is second image, then third, etc., and then A+ content, or is it just kind of all coming equal?
Equal, yeah. We actually tested this. We can pull from as far as the 7th image for Rufus. And within one chat, I was able to get every image in the chat. So it'll pull from...
You must be Rufus's biggest, talker, Andrew.
Engaged.
Time you must have spent talking to Rufus.
I'm throwing him
He
lots
was
of
the one
frisbees.
who generated half of the 100 million usages.
I saw
Maybe it was me,
Twitter
sorry.
a woman fell in love with ChatGPT, and I'm wondering maybe Andrew and Rufus, we may have another story like that coming. Sorry, you were saying.
I'm shaping the culture of click training data. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, Rufus is like, oh no, it's Andrew again. We have to chat for a long time. He's going to be asking me about it.
Per Forbes, I read 2 days ago, or maybe it was just yesterday, that Rufus is up to 500 million questions now.
Oh, cool. Good to get some numbers in there. Danny, you were going to jump in with something. Do you want to?
Yeah, I think really the most important thing to address, right, is you're at this crossroads. You've got the naysayers and those people that are on board. And I think one of the things we have to get across is one doesn't replace the other. You don't start gutting your listings and start going, I'm all in on Rufus, and then watch your rankings tank because your grandfathered in and you've taken out all the main keywords that you're ranking for, right? I think something like this, the safest way to test is, let's say the common example is you put your main keyword in your main image. Why are you only doing your main image? You've got a whole image deck. Test those. 90% of people do not complete the optional attributes. Use your attributes. Do you understand what I'm saying? So there's plenty of ways to test this for enhancement without derailing what you got. And Amazon keeps telling us. They keep telling us and we don't listen. They say short titles and bullet points. We know the reasons behind it. Everyone who's sitting around here knows the reasons. But people go, that looks shit, right? There's a reason why they're rolling out the enrichment of attributes. They need that information, but people don't care about it, yeah? And now we've got the cap to 200. Was it 200 character? Is it 200 characters across all categories now? Yeah, okay, that could be down to uniform. Then you've got dynamic titles that got announced. The problem that we face is that we get stuck into a rhythm. We sit in an echo chamber. New things will come along. People go, I ain't doing that. That's just basically, it's a fad or whatever. But there are safe ways to do this. And at no point would I suggest, or anyone suggest, is that you cut what you're doing. This is additive. Yeah. If you only put the keyword in your main image, what's wrong with doing the rest of your images? You're not going to disrupt anything you've done on your listing. You're going to enhance it so that you're going to get more engagement or possible more engagement via Rufus. Do you understand what I'm saying? If you enrich your attributes, that isn't going to do nothing but support your keywords, because attributes are like other branches of the tree that helps you with relevance. So if you are struggling with relevance on a keyword and you think you should rank better for it, and you've tried different keywords, you've had more in, why don't you enrich your attributes? Nearly every paper says, I've read, it mentions attributes all the way. Now, attributes are broad, right? We know that. But there are so many things that you could do in testing, but it's not a zero-sum game. Does that make sense? And I think that's an important thing to address, because I understand, as an agency owner of 7 years, you don't want to take someone's best-selling products and start playing around with the listings What you want to work on is the bottom 20% that are not working. Because think of the logic behind this, right? Let's just say we all know that everyone can't have a hit product every single time, right? You know, there's the odd Dr. Dre that comes along or some, you know, but they have their run. Yeah. But generally speaking, it's harder and harder to do it. So what do people do? They optimize their listing over and over and over again using the same methodology. And then they have to get rid of the product because it's no longer working. But what they're doing is they're applying the same methodology over and over again. And I think, what was the Einstein quote? There's a quote, doing the same thing, you lead you to madness, right? You're not going to
expecting different results.
Expecting different results. So there are plenty of ways to do it in terms of implementing this stuff, but you have to use your brain a little bit and then do it on failing products. Do it on the images that you're not doing. Complete your attributes. I know that through testing, one is saying, why do you need to do 1,000? We did it on client listings, right? Because we've got this the selling partner API as well. So you get more attribute data. Over 90% don't complete the optional attributes. And with Amazon coming along and using attribute enrichment, I want to tell you some stories about products in her catalog for the brand that she works with. They don't have the domain experience. So if Amazon pumps your listing with non-relevant, non-domain specific information into attributes, because you don't care about attributes because they're not keywords, that will have a demoralizing effect on your relevance. So it's really important to do these things as well. And I know that Amazon sellers have got a shit ton of things to do, but it's quite straightforward to do attribute enrichment. It's not rocket science. You can do a listing in about 15 to 20 minutes.
Yeah. So I want to ask you guys about the testing and results, but before we get to that bit, I just want to, reading from your TLDR on your blueprint, we've talked about noun phrase optimization, which is, in my mind, putting a scientific structure around this kind of thing we've been talking about context for a while. Semantic content building, have we talked about that? Did we cover that? Yes, great.
It's kind of like correlated. It's
kind of correlated.
It is not a linear process. Yeah.
Inference optimization, again, kind of correlated. We covered that. Integrated text and visuals, we covered that. So the last one is Q&A enhancements. Who wants to take that one? Come on, guys. You wrote the paper. Q&A enhancements. That was one of your.
I feel like we can all answer it. I feel like we all equally, as Danny
said.
Go on,
Andrew, you take it.
Okay. Yeah. I think with this strategy, again, the patent is very explicitly clear on this. Q&A related to building systems that automatically answer questions posted by these users in natural language. So one thing you want to do first is go to your page's question mapping. So map common customer questions, and then create questions clusters by topic, and then build answer templates using strong noun phrases. So take those strong noun phrases, the common questions, and reverse engineered into questions. And then those questions will be answered with, keyword rich noun phrases that you've built from your noun stacks, right? And so with that answer architecture, you would want to lead with direct noun phrase answers. And then you want to include supporting context and then link to related use cases. By link,
do we have any non-black hat, because we don't want to talk about the dark arts here, but do we have any, advisable ways of helping to get the right Q&As?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, number one, I got a couple, GBTs that, you could use for that. But in particular, I would say, you can create product content, again, that naturally answers common customer questions. Let me give you an example here with earbuds. So this is one way that you can actually incorporate it within a product description. I don't think people think about it this way. So it's going into it and saying, are you tired of earbuds falling out during workouts? Then you're actually answering it. Our sports earbuds are designed with a secure adjustable hook that keeps them locked in place even during intense exercises. Then you have, will they have enough battery life for a long run? The extended 8-hour playtime has you covered for even a marathon training sessions. How easy is it to connect them to the phone? The one-step pairing button instantly connects to your last paired device as soon as you take the earbuds out of the charging case. So notice how that like there's a beautiful flow to it from question and answer. So by framing the description around quotable questions, you're providing the exact kind of query to context mapping that Rufus actually thrives on. Those question phrases can directly match the types of searches customers are doing, while the answers showcase your product's unique value. So, Rufus identifies products through noun phrases in answers to customer questions. And so to optimize, make sure to create product content that naturally answers it, include clear descriptive noun phrases in your product titles and descriptions too, and structure your content to flow like a natural conversation, because when you're asking a question to someone, just like you're doing right now, you're expecting a natural flow answer, right, as best as possible. And so you want to structure your content to flow like that natural conversation, because Rufus thrives off natural language understanding, and focus on problem solving language too that matches how the customers actually ask those questions, which as time goes on, the questions are going to change. After that 100 million talked about it accelerate of the number of questions that's been asked, like customer questions have been developed now on product detail pages, but they might be way different now, right? Now that it's up to 500 million questions as well.
And what is interesting is that in the patent, you have the concept of the query answer pair, right? And I think me and Danny drove everybody crazy with the query answer pair. And previously was now it's the question answer pair in terms of, apologies, I got it wrong. So when we look at our previous search, the traditional search, you have the query item pair. It's the connection between the query and the items that it does. With Rufus, the patent talks about the question answer pair, because what it does, it generates questions pre-built, or it expects questions to come from the users themselves. And in that context, what it does, the first ranking system that kind of like goes through refinement with Rufus is how it ranks the noun phrases in order to give you a clear response. That's ranking number one, right? Because it was built to respond questions and then recommending products that are relevant to the response that it gave comes as a second level, right? So it's kind of similar to our traditional search concept, where you type a keyword and you get the products. With Rufus, you have the question, it needs to provide you an answer, and then it recommends the product. Or if it can't respond to your question, it's going to recommend another product that it finds relevant, who might help you, all starting from the question. That's why it's the concept of the question answer pair as a relation together, who ends up in recommending a product itself. Now, in terms of optimization, I would say a very simple golden rule would be to think about your product in terms of who uses it, how they use it, why they use it, right? And what would be other possible ways that your product can help or aid the customer in any way. And there you go. You have all the information that you need, kind of like laid out. And you just need to think about like you more in depth. I remember there was this specific product that I was working on, and at one point it was like the question, is it refrigerated? And of course nobody thought about putting a product, because it was not the type of product that you need to store it in the fridge, right? So think about it as a user, when they buy the product, right, where do they need to store it? Because somebody might ask, okay, I got this, can I store it, at room temperature? Or is it too cold, too hot, I don't know. So give as many details around the usage itself in order to optimize your listing correctly, because those questions more likely will change and improve over time.
Yeah, another thing is as well, obviously, Rufus
To
regurgitate.
ask one follow-up question, which is...
Oh, okay.
Yeah, as we're talking about, I got asked this question by someone the other day, because they were just saying, look, we've looked at all these different listings in our same category, and we're looking to compile questions that we should ask, and they're referring to someone else's products. I said, before you do that, what you want to do is ask questions on your page, right? So you're on your PDP, you're asking Rufus, questions, if you don't like the answer to the questions, depending on what it is, complete your optional attribute. So if you've got like key uses for the product, depending on the category, and it's 5 fields, complete them. Leave it 24 hours, go back, ask the questions again, and then Rufus will give the answers. So he was thinking from a point of view of, let's collate a load of questions what we think will be good to ask, right? But then they're not thinking of the fact that these are based on other people's products. Yeah, fair enough. There are going to be some common questions, but there's going to be a load of unanswered questions with your domain knowledge. You're asking Rufus, which regurgitates back what you've got anyway, right? So an example would be is how many people, if you're in, say, clothing, or depending on what it is, but if you've got an optional attribute for care, most people, if it's clothing, for instance, they might just say 40%, 40 wash or hand wash, but you can actually really elaborate that and enrich it. Because if it is you're in clothing, as an example, people are going to add those questions and they're not necessarily going to be in your listing, right? Because you're not optimizing for those. But if you put that in the care, which you might even have up to 200-300 characters, you can really go in depth with it. And that will answer a lot of the questions as well. That's just an example, right? Another example, there are going to be things where customers are going to ask certain questions, and it's stuff that's not contained in your images and it's not contained in the copy, because your focus is to optimize for keywords, to rank in, and obviously get the value proposition over. But that's the great thing about attributes, and there's a stack of them, and most people don't complete them. Find the right attribute field to complete, to put the information in there that gives the right context, and then Rufus will give that answer back in the format that you pretty much presented it. So that's another way of getting your questions answered without actually doing the question and answering thing to make it appear on your listing. Does that make sense?
And I just want to ask one more kind of follow-up questions to the Q&A, because this has been one of the optimization tactics that has been discussed in I guess extensively when it comes to Rufus. It's a very tactical question, but do you guys think that there is does it matter whether it's the brand or it's sort of like let's say a supposedly customer who puts the question and answers it?
I'm getting a lot of silences here. Joe, do you want to, when you ask, say, go to Warner or go to Andrew? There's like
I think
a little
he has connection issues.
If you got a connection issue, Joe, did you just drop in? Sorry.
Yeah.
I think it might be that I have connection issues.
Would you mind rephrasing the question, because I couldn't kind of fully hear it?
Yeah, sure. So when it comes to like doing the Q&A section, like, does it matter if for Amazon, if it's the brand that poses the question and answers it, or does it have to look like it's the customer doing both of these?
It's a both and question. That's a both and. I believe it's both, and the patent indicates it's both customer reviews and the Q&As that sellers would use as well. So, and that's what Rufus is trained on. Yeah, so I would definitely say both, and optimizing for both, and then using a little bit of that too, and making sure to have visual answer paths to the Q&A. So I would actually implement a little Q&A section within your visuals as well. Because if Rufus is going to read your product information and the customer reviews and the community Q&As, right, I think that having that on the visual, like on the images, will make it even clearer to what you want to communicate to Rufus. You're basically training Rufus to say what you want him to say on your product with your product information, because he's going to use your product information verbally and visually no matter what. Okay, but then he's also going to, apply it to the customer reviews and reason with it and say, okay, does this line up with what the customer reviews say too? But you don't want anything to say, well, it doesn't explicitly mention your product description. You don't want that. Anywhere it says that, we need to fill in the gaps. So if you see Rufus saying, I can't explicitly tell you if this is product information, but customers say this, you can then backtrack and say, no, I want Rufus to say something, and then build verbal and visual paths forward to make sure he does say, well, according to the product information every time.
Yeah.
And think that you have the pre-built questions, but also shoppers can create their own questions. So that's also something that you kind of like need to take into consideration. And the patent specifically mentions that for training purposes and learning purposes, it doesn't matter. It's behavior, and it's equal in terms of, you know, just a pre-built question that they use because they think it's interesting, or they can type something as a follow-up.
We're coming to the bottom of the hour now, so I just want to ask 2 quick final questions, and maybe Joe, you have some as well. So we've talked about how to optimize for Rufus. I think it's been super in depth, like probably the most detailed conversation about Rufus people have heard, apart from, you know, your guys' one that you did last week. But second to that, super in depth, talked about noun phrase optimization, the Q&A, semantic content building. What results or like testing can you guys quickly point to that, you know, supports all this analysis and work that you did?
I'll be publishing later some information. So I can't say too much now.
Yeah.
But let's just say there's something in the works, yeah?
Nice. Okay. And then my final question for you guys was, you know, we're here in January 2025. If you had to ballpark estimate what percentage of Amazon searches you think are going to be going through Rufus by January 2026, what would your percentage number be? Danny, I'll go to you.
I'd still say relatively low. I'm bullish on Rufus, but I'm realistic as well. Do you know what I mean? I'm not here to bang the drum and sell you fanfare.
Give us a number, because
20%.
20%.
I would say 20%, because you need adoption.
Yeah.
Look, we've looked at AI. We've seen what's gone on. It is being adopted across the board, right? But there are going to be shoppers out there who are not interested in it. There are going to be people out the ecosystem that have never heard of Rufus.
Yeah.
And that's fine as well. I think what we've got to do is not put too much pressure on that. Just think about it, like Amazon sellers are always looking for an edge, right? This is the easiest edge that you could at least try. And when you test stuff, you know, this is the problem we have with, and I respect this, and I'm gonna preempt this first. We talk about proven strategies. What is a proven strategy? It's normally a moonshot taken from a series of tests, right? And then handpick the best one. That's a proven strategy. Because if all proven strategies work, we'd all be sitting on the on a beach reading a 4-hour work week. True?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So when we look at optimizing this stuff, this is scale. You do it on 10 or 20 listings, and then some of them will work. Like most things, if you've done any work pertaining to proper conversion optimization, a lot of tests fail. Yeah. So 20% is still a high number.
It's a high
and could be beneficial. And if you are looking for an edge and it's not going to cost you $997, and it's not a secret thing that's hid behind walls, there's a document there. You can take it, and you can. That's what we're trying to encourage with the science, right?
Yeah.
We did that. We invested our time. Been very easy to turn that into a course behind closed doors and sell it at a high ticket, sell a few hundred units, whatever. But the whole purpose of this is to get this out to everyone, as many people as possible, because sellers are struggling for margin. Yeah. And if it doesn't take you much time to do these tests, it just takes you to sit down and think about doing these tests. That's the key thing for it. Sorry, I know I'm going off on a bit of a track.
Amazon is marketplace is 640 billion of revenue, so 20% of that is a lot.
And I'm giving you a high number. Let's be kind and middle it out. I'd say even at 10%.
Even at 10%. Andrew, what's your percentage number if you just had to give a number just to put it out there?
Yeah, I mean, I would say around 10% is good, and that's exponential if you really think about that in the Amazon world. 10% is insane.
What's your number?
I would agree. I think a bit, maybe more than 10%, but let's see, like somewhere in between 10 and 20%. I think that's definitely an optimistic vision that I wanna have at this point. So,
Joe?
What? I'm sorry.
I don't know. I'm not so bullish. I still think it's gonna be under 10%. I feel like things are gonna be still slow, but we'll see.
Well, I go 25 is my view.
Yeah.
Wow. You heard
Look,
it
and
first.
you know what,
I think
Max?
25.
Like most tests, we'll all be wrong. We'll come back.
Yeah,
in
you
January.
can- yeah, you
Every
can-
one of us on this podcast will be wrong, and that's
People
okay.
can clip this up later. Exactly.
Yeah.
And they're like, what idiots.
But at the end of the day, well, it doesn't matter. Well, look, in
Yeah.
order to push the needle on stuff, right, you got to be prepared to look like an idiot. For the last 5 years, I've been pushing the science. It's only last year or so, and thank you to Kevin King, because when Kevin said your boy is read a load of science papers, everyone's on the science, and with Cosmo coming along, and it made it consumable. Do you understand? But I was touring in 22. I did a world tour doing the science, but back then it was, yeah, Dan, it's just the science, you know, the usual old stuff. But now we're starting to see a move, and then you're going to your naysayers, and that's fine as well. So you've got to be prepared to look stupid, idiot, whatever, but you also got to be prepared to go, who gives a fuck? Who cares?
Yeah.
I don't. Do you understand? I'd rather do that and be wrong. But one day we all might be right.
Well, in 6 years, mobile went from 30% of searches to 80%.
Yeah.
And I think this is going to be a much steeper adoption curve than mobile. I think it's a much more transformative technology.
You think about it, Max.
Mobile.
Rufus is already showing in the search bar on desktop now and mobile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
there's two things there that could be Amazon just hammering home and pushing it and trying to force it through rather than natural adoption. But we don't know.
The only reason they'd force it is if they believe you get a higher conversion.
They won't risk sales. If there's anyone
True.
who won't risk sales more than anyone, it's Amazon.
Yeah.
So the more that we see Rufus becoming prominent, the more we can be sure that it's leading to more conversion on, and like that's the clearest, the clearest sign that this stuff is going in becoming more important.
Yeah. No, I think, look, at the end of the day, I don't want it to sound in a downward motion. Look, I've been pushing this for a number of years. You guys have been pushing. Juana's pushing. Andrew's pushing. There are other people out there. Vanessa. What Ritu's doing is amazing as well. But look, at the end of the day, you've got to put your neck out. And you're not always going to get it right. We've seen NFTs. We've seen TikTok Shop. I've been in this game 10 years. I've seen 10 cycles, 20 cycles, 30 cycles. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah,
we're going to see. And time tells everything at the end of the day.
Any final questions, Joe?
I got a question for you, Max.
Okay.
Was there any internal, when you were at Amazon, was there any mention of them going to our Gen I shopping assistant?
No, because not when I was there, because I quit Amazon after I saw the first open source model of Stable Diffusion. So I was like, this is going to be the future and I want to build my own business in it. So I basically had handed in I'd got out of Amazon before ChatGPT launched or anything, but I believed it would happen, but not that I know internally. But cool. I mean, thanks guys. That was an incredibly in-depth episode. I think pretty much everyone here, hopefully Andrew, but definitely everyone else here will be at seller sessions, I imagine. Danny, do you want to, plug to those who have soldiered through the last hour?
News comes next week, but
okay.
we've done a complete revamp. It's not a conference per se anymore. So we've got a new model and more stuff will come next week. I just want to make sure that the information is all locked in and then put it out there when it's all done. But yeah, within the next 7 days, there'll be some news coming.
By the time this is published, then check out Seller Sessions. Super excited, and hopefully everyone here will be present. So yeah, appreciate you guys. If they want to follow you, if they want to get in contact, quickly around the room, what's the best way? Danny, Seller Sessions, Juana, what's your?
I would say LinkedIn would be my go-to place. That's where I'm mostly active on.
LinkedIn.
Cool.
Definitely.
So we'll put those links in there, and Danny is LinkedIn as well nowadays. I know you're not a huge fan of the LinkedIn.
No, just go to Seller Sessions. It's fine.
Just
do
Seller
that. Or Danny at
Meet him
sellersessions.com.
for a pint at the bar at Seller Sessions. That's the best way to
Yeah.
reach Danny. But cool. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. And
Thank you for the support and your time, guys, as well. Yeah, really appreciate it.
Thank you.